Oh yeah, I forgot to mention you're listening to Shambhala Radio, 93.9 FM, live from the heart of Shambhala Festival Radio.
So my experience of Shambhala is that it's a big music festival in Salmo. It takes place just outside of Salmo, BC on the Bunshoe Farm, which is the Salmo River Ranch. It's an electronic music festival, and there are 5 or 6, I think there's 6 stages now, that run 24 hours a day when show is happening, and people come from all over the world to come and be part of it. It started out as a group of friends getting together to have a dance party in the woods on his parents' farm, and it grew from there.
Shambhala, a music festival resting just outside of Salmo, BC, has been held every year since 1998. It has attracted around 15,000 people in recent years, allowing everyone to express themselves freely. The festival brings in some of the world's best electronic music talent and is a showcase for artists of all kinds.
In the earlier years, it was pickup trucks with tarps, for food, and people were doing, it was a lot more homemade, and so there's certainly been a lot of refinements. One could argue perhaps that when gatherings get really large, they maybe lose some of that intimate vibe that small gatherings have, but I think it's a really special gathering.
One of the nice things about Shambhala is that if you are willing to be part of it and to help it grow, there's a lot of room for you to move up. PK Sound is a speaker manufacturer out of Alberta. They got involved with the festival pretty early on, and now they're world renowned for their speakers and their technology, which is way ahead of the curve.
Shambhala is well over 20 years old now, and as the festival grows, the origins of the party are starting to become murky.
Mike and Sarah, Lioness and Hula, have been staple programmers, especially Sarah in her earlier years, where she used to program the artists for all the stages. And I really believe it was her sensitivity in programming and her impeccable selection of artists in those early years that really made that festival stick out from the just, random kind of parties that were happening all over the place. And her curation, I think, really made that festival. And I don't think a lot of people know or recognize perhaps that, their unique input in the earlier years in selecting artists and being supportive and working together. Now each of the stages is its own entity and it books for its stage, and they're almost at some subtle level in competition with each other. Everybody wants to have the most people on their stage, but in the earlier years it was much more about this artist on that stage and then that artist on that stage, and it was about creating flow throughout the whole party. And then the best chill out people were on the beach, and the main thing was on this stage, and there was much more movement. And that's a little lost now, as each stage is its own big entity, trying to create its own unique vibe. So that's a thing. But
there's a lot of room within it for people who are creative and are interested in excellence to further what they do.
You get all walks of life, and from people wearing nothing to people wearing stilts and furry costumes and anything in between, really. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of judgment, and if there is, it kind of gets overrun by the acceptance of people just being really excited, because as soon as one person expresses themselves freely like that, it's everyone else wants to also, and it becomes really inspiring. So I feel like it's one of the places that a lot of people who don't have that a lot in their life get to really be themselves for a weekend. Yeah.
Adam Shaikh, a Kootenai-based DJ, musician, and recording artist, has attended Shambhala almost every year. For Adam, Shambhala provides a connection with people who enjoy his music.
It's certainly introduced me to the community of, music lovers in British Columbia and Alberta and really across the country, and it's continued my ability to sort of travel around the country and play music all over the place. I think large summer festivals are a real focal point, and Shambhala has become that on the West Coast. Certainly having a yearly festival gives you this sort of almost like a deadline or a focal point where you're trying to create new music, and you know, everybody's peak sets are typically the one that you prepare for Shambhala with all your best songs and your best remixes and whatnot. So it sort of, I guess, has a focus, so maybe that's something.
Shambhala also is a major way for many electronic artists to become more popular and also establish a fan base. While the festival evolves, past traditions are left behind for new trends that adapt easier to their now larger audience. Of course, this means that DJs are constantly trying to create new material for their fans.
The opportunity to play to such a huge and diverse audience from, like I said, far and wide is really beneficial for our music careers. But on the other side of it too, having grown up in Nelson, just down the road, it always, there's so many good friends and people who come out that it feels like this big kind of reunion of friends and people. So I end up like hanging out with all these people that I haven't seen in whatever months or years, or so that's really special as well. Yeah.
One of the things that Shambhala has chosen early on that has made it a really safe and kind and welcoming place is to choose to not have alcohol on site. So you don't end up with people in drunken brawls.
Although Shambhala is usually seen in a good light, there are many who think that the festival might promote drug use.
They do a really good job in harm reduction and stuff like that, so, you know, it's, as much as people like to think it's this crazy place where there's lots of, you know, bad things going on, it's not that bad. I mean, if you're looking, you might find something, but I mean, if you're out there and you're there and your intention is to have a good time and just, you know, I think that's what will predominantly come out, is that everybody's just having a good time. We're all there for the same reason.
There's a lot of effort put into reducing harm during the festival, with very few injuries in all the years they've been running.
Well, harm reduction, if you're not familiar with the idea, is the sort of looking at substance use from a non-harm lens. And what that can mean is, we know that people are going to, say, drink alcohol, or not at Shambhala because there's no booze at Shambhala, but, or just as an example, people may drink alcohol. So we have laws and things around that we recognize people are going to do it. So we try and make sure they can do it in safe ways and don't drive or whatever that goes with that. And so with substance use like drugs at Shambhala, because a lot of drugs are still illegal, there's testing there with anchors. So if someone were to bring drugs and have them tested, they would be able to know whether they were safe or not, and then at that point can make a decision as to whether they're going to take them or not.
I think the harm reduction crew out there is, I think they've won awards for it, and I think they've been on the news and stuff for being one of the festivals that has taken it to the next level as far as ensuring people's safety and stuff. So I think it's been, yeah, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, they've really amped it up and made it, you know, there's a lot of people there taking care of others. There's like safe spaces, there's, you know, there's drug testing, there's all kinds of stuff going on that is there to, you know, ensure people have a safe time out there. So I think they've done pretty good.
Shambhala does an amazing job with harm reduction, and the harm reduction team that works within Shambhala is one that travels around the world talking about the different strategies that they use there. The worst part about Shambhala, I think anybody you talk to at Shambhala would probably tell you it's the heat and the dust. I mean, we jokingly call it Shambalung afterwards because a lot of people will develop a really bad cough. One of the ways that a lot of us deal with that is just wearing a mask, a dust mask, while we're there. But that's probably the most difficult thing about it, is that it's so hot and it is so dusty. It is so dusty.
There was a period where I sort of realized that Shambhala, because there's so many people there, it sort of becomes this microcosm of our whole society. And so you start to see things that, you know, you would probably see anywhere else, but everything's so close together, and it's such an open, intense environment that sometimes things get amplified. And so there's definitely been times where I worried about some things that were going on that made it more difficult for me to have a good time. The festival has also taken huge strides since I started going, especially in the last 5-6 years. They've stepped up their everything, you know, just their support of people and the consent culture and cleanliness and, you know, accessibility, and just they've really made an effort to address some of the issues I think that came up because they grew so quickly.
I've been going for 17 years and it's as safe, if not safer, than most of the places. I think it's a place where communities come together and said, look, we want to come and create a safe place where we can all get together. I think that the challenges that plague large gatherings on any, you know, spectrum, whether it's a football game or a hockey game or a large commercial festival or whatever, they're just the law of averages. There are humans that decide to steal from tents and be idiots. But for the most part, you know, like, I've never really seen any fights there, and, you know, everybody's pretty chill. Usually everyone's looking out for each other. I think that the challenges faced in our society with drugs is across the societal spectrum, and so sometimes the festival is more peeling back the lid on what the society is doing rather than being a place that's creating those things. And I think that's a subtle distinction that needs to be made. People take drugs regardless, and I think that you know, these festivals, especially Shambhala, have done a pretty top-notch job at creating drug testing spaces and first aid stations, and, you know, people are always looking out. There's pretty decent security that are always looking out for people, and the people at the festival themselves are encouraged to look out for their fellow friends. So I personally feel it's safe, and, you know, they do a pretty admirable job at keeping it, you know, to that level.
Shambhala has many experiences that can't be found anywhere else. It's a unique venue for individual expression, and it's a major showcase for artistic talent. For better or for worse, Shambhala has become one of the West Kootenay's major cultural events.